Hello, everyone. I'm Daz, and welcome to American Civil War and UK History podcast. This presentation is available as a video on our YouTube channel or as a podcast from wherever you get your podcast from. And most recently, the audio only has been put up onto YouTube. So not only do you have the video, you also have the audio podcast as well. And today's presentation is in association with Monuments for UK Veterans of the American Civil War Association, which I am one of the co-founders of. Hashtag the Monumental Project. So if you want to find anything that's going on with monuments, just put in hashtag the Monumental Project and you will find us. And to keep up to date with everything American Civil War and UK history, you can do that via our website, where you will find blog posts, updates, and links to all of our social media pages. And this also includes Monuments for UK Veterans of the American Civil War. They have their own area where you can go and keep up to date with everything that's going on. The link is available in the podcast description. And today's discussion is a recap of 2023. And we're also going to look a little bit at 2024 and what we're going to be doing for the Monumental Project. And of course, it is our second birthday in January. So this year, we were formed in 2022 and we was formed on the 14th of January. So happy birthday to us. And of course, to discuss this with me is the other co-founder of the association, Gina Denham. Welcome, Gina.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, Daz, and anybody else who's listening, depending on where you are in the world. Hi, Daz. Nice to see you.
Nice. Okay, let's go. Just get my shared screen up because that is important today. And so let's have a look at what happened in 2023 because we had quite a busy year, didn't we, Gina?
Yeah, definitely. Busy with getting donations, busy with dedications, and as usual with this project, I always think about how I found you. And that was a process of obviously first honouring my Civil War ancestor, George Denham. And then, of course, George Denham needed some people to honour him appropriately. And one of those men were you, one of those people were you, and other members of SOSCAN. And curiously, that seems to have happened this year, that you and I have now found other people which have seen, it's like a tsunami of development. So, yeah.
Excellent, yeah. And so, I mean, really and truly, the first part of the year we don't win because of the time of the year and it's it's cold and this that and that. We're not very active, are we? I mean, we're active on social media. So,
Yeah.
as far as 2023 was concerned, the first time we had a little outing out was the conference. The Americans, so myself and Gina are both members of the American Civil War Roundtable UK. I will say that it is one of the oldest in the world. It was formed in 1953. It's not the oldest, but one of the oldest, which is fantastic. But Gina had the opportunity to attend Saturday. Of course, we had two amazing guest speakers, one being the co-founder, of Emerging Civil War, which is an amazing blog page on the internet there, and of course they've got Facebook and they've got YouTube channel. They have their own podcast. So Chris was one of them, and then we also had he's a ranger at Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania. That is Frank O'Reilly. So you got to see some great talks as well. But also, this is the first time you had attended the round table conference, and you got to highlight and show people, and that's why I put the pictures of the display there and stuff like that. So just explain what that was like attending that for the first time for you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I mean, I didn't get to hear all the guest speakers talk. I certainly heard Chris Mikowski, and wow. I mean, I just closed my eye and I was on the battlefield by his side, and it just brings a certain magic. And I'm kind of feeling a bit of regret that I didn't have time to listen to all the others, only because obviously I was on the display, and obviously, our mantra is raising monuments, but awareness too. And it was for me, it's always core to our business to raise awareness, to shine some light on the British veterans of the American Civil War. So obviously we had that display. It was great to get a picture with Chris there, and of course you can see some of the SOSCAN members there. Um, and yeah, so it was just really a really good event. Some interest as well, and obviously from the members of the round table. I felt quite warmly welcomed as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, the display. Obviously, we had a range of documents on there, but as you know, Daz, and perhaps we'll see later in this
Yeah.
interview, how we kind of develop our display to make it
Well,
a bit more efficient
mhm. That's what
and
I'm going to bring up because, um,
mm,
and again, you'll see the end result, ladies and gentlemen, in a minute. What's come from it, but having a display outside is quite challenging compared to
mm,
having one indoors like you did at the conference, isn't it? So, but we'll talk
yeah,
about that in a moment about the
yeah,
difference there. But
yeah,
yeah, so the conference was, like Gina said, was fantastic, and all of the roundtables talks have actually been filmed, and you can see a picture of me there with my camera, and that was a picture taken by Gina of me filming just before filming one of the talks. All the talks are available on American Civil War Roundtable UK's YouTube channel, or will be. There's only 3 up at the moment, but they are going to go up. And yeah, go and watch them because again, Chris Mikowski's Spotsylvania is something else.
mm,
Wow. But
yeah,
yeah, so that was the conference. That was in April. And April and May was quite a busy time for us because we had 2 trips to London, 2 days.
yeah,
And so that brings me on to the next thing, and that was getting to walk. And this is one of the highlights of 2023 for me, getting to walk in the footsteps of John Davis. And we
yeah,
did something else later that day, which we'll bring up in a minute. But let's
yeah,
talk about walking in the steps because this was fantastic, wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, the thing is, this for people who are listening who think it is just on in North America. It's not because I feel on that day, which was yeah, obviously it was quite cold. I'd said to you, there was kind of 2 reasons why we're up in London, but I'd said to you, look, how about we try and do a bit of walking in the footsteps of the London branch of American Civil War veterans, and also some of those iconic sites in London that are linked, to America in different ways. So obviously you've got the statue there at the bottom there with you recreating a picture taken in Parliament Square, when you're obviously standing in the spot where Arthur William Fraser Smith, who was the Honourable Secretary of the London branch, and George Havens Putnam, who was also a supporter of the London branch, stood. So you're in that position there. And it really was a fantastic day. I sometimes say walking in the footsteps of the London branch of American Civil War veterans, but sometimes I feel they're by our side in this endeavour.
Mhm.
But these are all wherever we go, there seems to be some kind of curious a moment whereby something happens to us and we go, oh, we never expected that to happen.
Yeah,
So case in point, I'm looking to your left picture there,
yeah,
Daz,
that's
where
right. And that's
yeah,
yeah,
Jeff Fairburn, who
just
is
turned up, didn't he? Yeah,
yeah. So Jeff Fairburn, I mean, I don't know a great deal about it, but what I do know, he has a keen interest in local history. He does do walks in South London because I know he doesn't. And just to put that in context, so that white metal clad wall is the interior of the archway that housed what we believe to be the premises that was used by the London branch of American Civil War veterans from 1910 onwards. Now, prior to that, it was known as the Ragged School Mission, and John Davis, the founder of the London branch, who was a missionary, had used that archway. I think when you and I first went into that pub, and it's John Davis was heavily involved in the temperance movement, and you can see on the invites to London branch meetings there was a strictly no smoking, no drinking policy. And, I'm a big fan of John Davis because of his ability to be such an amazing change agent for those impoverished Civil War veterans in London. But I do believe he might be slightly turning in his grave now to think that the place that he saved so many souls is now being used as a microbrewery. But indeed, it was, a very refreshing drink to conclude our little walk that day in the footsteps of the London branch. But yeah, Jeff there was just a chance meeting. We posted up on our social media, which shows the power of, raising awareness, because Jeff happened to be in the area and he came and joined us for a glass of friendship, which I thought was quite nice.
Yeah.
That for me, that day, and I do get a little bit emotional when I think about it, that day was really important to me because I know that my great great grandfather went there in 1910 on that kind of grey September afternoon, Tuesday, 20th September 1910, and to become the eighth member of the London branch. It was really nice to be by your side in that process, because I got to know you through the dedication ceremony for George Denham.
Yeah.
And to you and I, I'd never been there before. So to go there with you, we kind of walked along, we're looking at trying to do a bit of detective work. It was a wonderful day. And then this.
It was, yeah. And what was great about it is we had the noise of the railway above us as well. Because if for people that don't know, this is actually above that is a rail line into London. It's one of the major stations, I think, is it?
Yeah, it leads to London Bridge.
So you've got the noise of the trains constantly going overhead. So, and again, that has been there since that would have been there at the time of London Bridge. So hearing the noises that they would have heard when they.
It's great. And
Davis described it as a telescope.
Yeah, so he described, because it's very, very long. And I was fortunate recently to manage to get one of John Davis's biography, which is called A Marvel of Mercy. And within it is some sketches of the London of the interior of that archway. So yeah, and I mean, to walkers, people just walking by or people enjoying, a drink in there, great. But for me, it was just a little, for me, it was a special place, like a bit of a pilgrimage for us. So that marked the end of that day. But as you can see there, you've got the picture of you. I know you're a big fan of him, obviously. President Lincoln.
Yes.
I notice, unless you're going to put him on other slides, Daz, I know there's not a picture of you with George Washington and all the other places.
There isn't, no, but we did meet George Washington.
Yeah.
But fantastic. Again, it's a 2-part day, and we're going to. And I just want to say, anybody listening via audio, the pictures we're describing, if you do want to see them, hop over to YouTube, and you can do that, because we are describing pictures that we're seeing here of our time in 2023. But anyway, the next part of that day was really, really important. Yeah. And it was just amazing. I mean, we couldn't believe that. Firstly, we'd been invited to the US Embassy in London, and one of the reasons we went up there that day was for that. And I mean, wow, what a evening that was.
Yeah, I mean, to think, so that middle image of you and myself, where we're stood there, where you've got a miniature version of Lincoln sat in his chair, which is within the embassy. So people aren't going to be able to see that. That's not something that they can just see. You've kind of got the seal there, the Great Seal of the United States, and you've got us with Brian Davidson now on the left. Now, just to describe Brian Davidson, he does love a Hawaiian shirt. And I almost felt out of sync that day, because neither you or I are wearing our Hawaiian shirts, but it was just great. And to enjoy a glass of friendship with Brian was really important. Brian has really been an important part of the Monumental project as well, because I met him, like you, at that first dedication for George Denham, and he thereafter has supported us with other dedications, and he brings a certain magic in the same way that Chris Mikowski can pull you in. Brian can kind of pull you in and kind of really add an extra, because I mean he's obviously a serving in the military, in United States military. But the way he just talks about things and that kind of connecting the dots, where because he's from Tennessee, he's in the places that George Denham served, and that he just adds that certain thing. And the one thing I love with Brian is when our dedication ceremonies, as others have done, but when Brian affords that final salute when we have our dedications, and it's almost like closure for me that the veterans that we seek to honour get that salute. It might have taken 100 years, but it feels like closure for me. And I just think those veterans may have not realised that 100 years after their passing, there'd be some crazy English people, you and I,
Yeah.
who want to honour their service. But I love it. I
And
absolutely love
yeah,
it.
I remember I kept saying to you, I can't believe I'm sitting in here. It's
Yeah,
crazy. But what
yeah,
a fantastic, and I mean the view from the seventh floor there.
yeah,
Again, you wouldn't
yeah,
be unless you get invited in. But wow, I mean, you see
yeah.
the Thames, you can see Westminster Abbey from there.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that
fantastic.
beer that we're holding those to, I'm convinced because I kept my bottle. I think it's called Relations Sip.
Yeah, yeah,
And the brewery is just down the road to the embassy.
that's
And
right.
I think that, yeah, and I think
Yeah, see, I
they've got
think it
American
is.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it was nice, and it just kind of, it's a nice picture there because it is about relationships
yeah,
in terms of everything that we're doing, collaborating with people.
yeah.
So it was a lovely, lovely evening.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
we had to cut short early because we had to be back in
yeah,
London the next day. And just quickly before I get on to why we were up in London on the following day, I just want to tell everyone myself and Gina did film a video of walking in the footsteps of John Davis in the London branch. It's on our YouTube channel. Go and look at that. It's fantastic. And
mm,
also, we did in September a podcast dedicated to John Davis himself. So please go and have a listen to that because that is absolutely fantastic. But the main reason we went to London the second day was, of course, for this. So Francis Albemarle McDougall's dedication. Uh,
yeah,
and again, you can see Brian there. It's the last time Brian actually attended and we'll get onto that in a minute with some more pictures later on in the podcast. Because Brian Davison is no longer on that in that post.
mm,
But yeah, just tell us about and we had it was quite a contrast because we had the cold weather the day before, but the following day was absolutely glorious weather, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah. A higher power must be involved in these affairs, Daz, because yeah. So you got Frank Albemarle, or Francis Albemarle McDougall. He was in Company E of the 111th Pennsylvania Volunteers, and it's quite fresh in my mind recently because when he was applying for his veterans pension, he said that there were no other 111th veterans in the United Kingdom. Whereas you know, and I know, that's not true. Frank was from Southwark in South London. And unbeknown to him, when he returned from the American Civil War, having, served, he served at Lookout Mountain, Warhatchee, Missionary Ridge, Ringgold, got wounded in action. He remained in the 111th and survived, and obviously came back to England after the Civil War. But unbeknown to him, which makes it or even more sadder, was there were another 111th man not 5 miles away from him, of all the places in the country, and that was George Denham. Neither knew about each other. And I always feel quite sad that, unfortunately for Frank Albemarle, he died in 2007, was only able to perhaps enjoy the fruits of John Davis's labour and enjoy that camaraderie that John Davis created through the London branch. But I want to give a big shout out, if I may, to Manor Park Cemetery. There are other veterans in that cemetery. You've got one veteran who served with the Kansas Cavalry for the Union. You've got Edward Edwards, who was a London branch member too. But Manor Park Cemetery really accommodated us in terms of placement of the official burial marker for Frank Albemarle. You can people who are just listening, they surrounded it with two posts, which they then painted it, and they sort of tidied up the area ready for the dedication and planted it with flowers, almost as John A. Logan wanted when we afford our acts of remembrance in these veterans. Manor Park Cemetery continue to support us, and I'm having conversations with them about future dedications. And it's sort of another sort of relationship that was created out of our endeavours to help Frank Albemarle. And as with these dedications, we're quite lucky that we had the Mayor of Southwark who kindly attended, and we also had representatives from Newham Council come along as well. And you can see there's a bottom picture there. You've got men wearing the Union uniforms. You've got my mum. You've got Brian Davidson, and you've got other interested parties too. You've got Martin E. Cross, who is involved, if you like, he's already got faith, but he's actually going down that route to take a role in ministry, if you like. So he was there. Well, but yeah, what lovely. It was really quite warm that day,
It
considering
was
it was.
lovely, yeah.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah.
And we've been back to Frank's grave, and the plan is, I think, I see you've got the Grand Army of the Republic, or we put a Grand Army of the Republic burial marker there.
Yeah.
But as you know, and we'll get it a chance to mention it, but I'll mention it now, that we've now created our own monuments for UK veterans of the American Civil War Association burial markers, because in essence, there's no evidence to suggest that Frank Albemarle was a member of the Grand Army Republic. And off air, you and I had that conversation. Sometimes they were not allowed to join the Grand Army Republic because they may have relinquished their allegiance to the United States. So it's always going to be up in the air. So yeah, great day.
It
Great
was
day.
fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was that. And then I want to bring this up because you really did some research last year, and so your journey took you to Oxford, didn't it? And it took
Oh
you,
yeah.
yeah. So I can't remember
Yeah.
what time of year this was, but I remember you telling me about it, and I saw the pictures. And I just wanted to, get you to tell us a little bit about that experience of getting to go to Oxford. And I don't know how many times you went. Did you go a couple of times, didn't you, or was it
Yeah.
once? I can't
Yeah.
remember. But this was research that you were doing, wasn't it, for your books?
Yeah.
From what-
I became aware that the from 1917 onwards or thereabouts, Arthur William Fraser Smith, who became the Honourable Secretary of the London branch when John Davis died on the 5th of January 1917, he was equally as proactive as John Davis in that show and tell, to really use any means whatsoever to raise awareness of the London branch. And so there's this booklet called the Anglo-American Yearbook that came out every year, because obviously it's a yearbook. And I thought, wow, there might be, because I want to squeeze the data. I want to make sure that I can get every ounce of available information I can about the London branch, so that it will never again be lost to history, and pull it all together. So, no, as always, if I go somewhere, I want to find out if there's a Civil War veteran, and particularly, and even better if they're a London branch veteran due to my family connection. So yeah, went to Oxford. I've never been to that, and I had to get a membership card. I went into these hallowed halls where, these fantastic ancient books were, and I was able to go through not so ancient books, but these Anglo-American yearbooks, and really kind of get information from those books that I hadn't realized was available. So say, for example, how they it's a pity actually, because I've got some of those booklets that I've produced, but that one's, I think, is in my front room. But that one is talking about how the London branch, what they did when they were formed. I think they just had six kind of aims in terms of their work, and like their membership fees, etc. But it was really good because it gave me some extra information, and it also tells me, and as I say, this is in preparation for the next book, who was the president of the London branch at different times during different years. And it's quite sad, really, because Arthur William Fraser Smith died in 1932. And in essence, there was only a couple of London branch members left after that. And there were no more entries written in that book. There were people who just tried to take over the mantle, take over that role, because the London branch obviously liked to place a wreath at Lincoln's memorial, and obviously that ritual ceased with the passing of the last London branch member in London. So yeah, it was great, and obviously, yeah. So I always carry. You can see one big image there with our replica of the London branch medal that we got created. And so I'll always carry a couple of them because I believe in gifting. And funny enough, when we were at Frank Albemarle's dedication, when my mum and I went up to Frank Albemarle's grave one day, there was a guy there, just I think he was from another part of London, just remembering his family. And he said, "Oh, I always see this headstone or the burial marker for Frank Albemarle. I'm at Albemarle. And what's it all about?" So we told him his story, and he was really fascinated. He was a black guy, and I suppose we were talking a little bit about how, obviously many of the people we know were union men, and I don't know, it just added something to it. But to understanding what a British-born man would do to go to America in the court, fighting for a cause, in terms of liberty, emancipation, whatever you want to call it. And I gave him one of those London branch members medals just as a parting gift. So I always carry a few. So there
Yeah,
you
we've always got them, haven't
go.
we? Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
so that's fantastic that you got to go and do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, your research doesn't stop, does it? It carries on. And
Yeah.
anyway, So we went back to London because we got invited back for a second time. So not only did we go there once,
Mm.
but we went there a second time, and that was because
Oh,
Brian Davison was being reposted somewhere else. I would
yeah.
like you to talk about the guy that's next to you on the other side as well, because he's been a great part and a big part. Andrew, is it a big
Yeah.
part of what we
Yeah.
do?
Andrew
And
Keith.
also
Yeah.
Chrissy,
So,
the wife of Brian Davison
Brian.
as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
he invited us to a leaving do in the garden of the embassy,
Yeah.
and that was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah. Definitely. You got Andrew there. Another person wearing the obligatory Hawaiian shirt. Yeah, so Andrew, as I say, has helped us with the dedications. He's kind of the facilitator behind that process. And again, we were blessed. It almost seems that you and I, so far, at risk of not suddenly condemning ourselves, seem to have relatively good weather in our little
Yeah,
endeavours.
yeah.
I can deal with cold. Sometimes the rain's a
Apart
bit.
from George's dedication when it was,
Yeah, but I do feel
and
that
again, that was on purpose. Yeah,
yeah, I do feel that George Denham, when he was marching from Nashville down to
yeah,
Chattanooga, it was an absolute quagmire. The weather was dire. It was, reportedly raining for pretty much the whole month. So he gave us the whole deal. George
yeah,
Denham did on that one. He wasn't going to go, "Oh, you can have a lovely sunny day," because that's not what happened to me. So we got what we deserved, as it were.
mm,
But I do feel that what a something. Can you possibly, if you think about it, you and I met at George Denham's dedication. We met Brian, and one thing led to another. That
mhm.
could you possibly imagine that when you rang me that first time to say, "Is it possible I can come along to this dedication?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." I didn't know you, but obviously I could feel your passion. I was like, yeah, come along. And then blow me down. That then leads to a nice little soiree in the gardens of the American Embassy with people that become our friends and acquaintances. Uh, yeah, it's a strange thing where how life goes, isn't it? Where you meet people and
Yeah,
it kind of creates these opportunities. I'd never imagined that that would be possible, but what a wonderful evening having that, sharing a glass of friendship again with
yeah,
these people. And it just one interest, and my interest in the Civil War has led to, well, not so much my interest in the American Civil War, but my interest in a certain group of people that served in it. I'm never going to claim to be an expert in everything American Civil War. It's not but I'm more interested in the human story and how people interrelate and and get on with each other. So Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a wonderful evening.
And we're going to move on to the reenacting season now because that was fantastic. It's one of the best reenacting seasons I've had since COVID, actually. Although they're all good, don't get me wrong, but it felt like we were back to some kind of normality after the pandemic. But what was really special, so I think in total I did about six events. I know you couldn't do them all because of certain, commitments like holidays, things like that. But one of the most special ones of all was Detlin this year. One of the
Oh yeah,
reasons being is you managed to um, sort out your display, which was
yeah,
fantastic, and get it to a point where you can see on the picture now. But also, we represented the 111th Pennsylvania in our displays, didn't we? So,
yeah,
just tell us about what that was like for you. And I know you basically went in front of, and it took us a little while to work out how to present it, didn't it?
yeah, yeah.
First day was a nightmare because we didn't know. But eventually, what happened was Gina went into the woods. We waited until we had a build up of people inside the area that we were portraying this, the 111 Pennsylvania, and then Gina would tell everyone George's story. But yeah, just
Mm.
tell us about your experience there, if you wouldn't mind.
Ah, again, who could have possibly imagined? I mean, it was wonderful at George Denham's dedication to see you and other members of SOSCAN coming along wearing a union uniform above his grave, wearing that white star, etc., that represented obviously the 111th. But I to then conceive the idea that at some point I'd not only be at Detlin, that we'd have our display at Detlin, and which had sort of been fine-tuned. You've got just for people who are listening, our display incorporates a replica of an official headstone that the Memorial Services Department of Veteran Affairs provide, and our one's a replica, but it also says veteran 1861 to 1865. We have a wreath, we have the flags, and it's basically a replica of our branding anyway. And then, of course, yeah, you've got the display, and we designed it in such a way that it's a flat pack one, but it also looks quite professional too. And obviously, this was the first year that I managed to get appropriate tentage, a fly sheet, etc. When I have displayed before, obviously it wasn't necessarily windproof, etc. So the whole display had a few props. It definitely got interest, and yeah, and it was nice to just be camping there, immersing myself in the experience. I can't really describe it, Daz, but I like to imagine the lens of how George Denham viewed the world, because obviously he was English, I'm English, and to see those rows of tents and stuff, the streets that I saw at Detlin, it's quite wonderful. I can't really describe it because I realise I'm seeing just a small in a sense of what he may have experienced. So if I may, I'll talk about then the picture on the left now because
Yes,
of
go
what
for
that
it.
meant. So the picture on the left is obviously you've got members of SOSCAN. They normally portray the bucktails, but they portrayed the 111th Pennsylvania Volunteers, and they were all encamped in the woods. And the idea being, as he said, was that the public would come in and they would see people living history. So you had a campfire there, people were cooking food by the fire, people writing letters, people were sleeping, and they were on picket duty, very much as George Denham was. Hits at Lookout Creek before they attacked Lookout Mountain. And I'm going to tell you now that that woods is not dissimilar to the woods that line Lookout Creek, having been there eventually. That was a massive walking in the footsteps. But to then every so often hear the thunder of artillery that Soscan possess, and also hearing those muskets and people shouting and hollering. Now, just amazing because I always think George Denham, one of his baptism by fire was the night battle at Warhatchee, and it was in complete darkness, thousands of people involved. So obviously this was a somewhat on a smaller scale, but it really just gave me a sense of it. I felt quite proud and incredibly grateful for those Hoscan members who were prepared to change the uniform that they normally wear and just portrayed 111th that weekend. It was wonderful, really. And as you say, it did start off a little bit clunky because he didn't know how to do it. But again, maybe George Denham was by my side. I know his
Mhm.
story inside and out. And it kind of just worked in the end. I did, as you can tell, I've kind of lost my voice at the moment because of this COVID type cold that's going around. And I pretty much lost my voice that weekend because over the thunder of artillery and musket fire, I was telling George Denham's story from the time he arrived in America to the time that he departed America, with post-traumatic stress disorder, malaria, and he was all used up. So it was a great weekend, and obviously you and I had we was able to, because it's a multi-period event, isn't it, Dad? So
I'm just going to change the slide now. You're like this. So
yeah.
yeah, this is a mixture. I mean, four of the pictures are from Detlin, but one of them's from our first event, I believe. Gina's got this thing
Yeah,
about French Calvados, and
yeah, mate,
I did try it. I did try it, but he got a bit offended that I didn't want to drink it after trying it.
yeah,
It's not my
yeah,
cup of tea, but we had so much fun. Not just
yeah.
Detlin, but throughout the season. So when everybody goes home, ladies and gentlemen, reenactors really let their hair down, and I got to meet some of my heroes.
Yeah, well, you've got the picture there with. Funny enough, I know that living historian who's dressed as Captain America. He made that outfit up himself. He kind of pulled it all together. I mean, he's tall enough and kind of big enough to really portray very well Captain America. So this guy called Mike Ring. I don't know the other people, but obviously you can see you and I are sharing a glass of friendship. And as you said, you do not like Calvados, but for me, Calvados, through my involvement in World War II living history and having gone to Normandy for many years since sort of the early 2000s, for me, Calvados always represents a glass of friendship. Unlike you, Daz, you know that even if I don't like it, I'm going to drink it anyway because it represents a glass of friendship. You're a bit more upfront and go, no, I don't like it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it
what
was
a
fun, wasn't it?
great, yeah, what a night. And it really, my brain with my ADHD, I'm already thinking about next year at Detlin
Oh, me
already.
too. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, great event um, for the public, for the living historians. Um, I can only, and if anybody's ever thought about going to a living history event, and they're not too far from Detling, Military Odyssey, I think it's called, isn't it?
yes,
And but yeah, I do recommend it. My mum came along and my daughter and my grandson, and they enjoyed it too. And I also think because that when my mum came along, that I was able to imagine. I think it was during COVID as well, so it was a bit limited, possibly. But that my mum was just equally wowed as I was in terms of seeing you guys from SOSCAN, the Southern Skirmish Association, portraying Union and Confederate
yeah,
troops at different points. So wonderful. So yeah, good memories of that, Lynn.
excellent. And then that moves us on to our next dedication, which we did in October, and that was John
Hmm.
Taplin. And you see a picture there of me doing a talk about John's life. So the last two dedications I've done that, which is a great honour for me. But yeah,
Mm.
again, we were. It was a little bit chilly that day, but we was blessed with the weather again, as far as it wasn't raining and things like that. So again,
Mm.
attended by some great people. We had somebody new come from the embassy on this occasion, didn't we? So just tell us a little bit about that dedication and how it went.
Yeah. So we were hoping to get the naval attaché to come along, but unfortunately, because of their important role, but we did get other representatives from the Navy. This year, for the first time as well, we had representation from the American Legion. We had the mayor from Hendon come along and give a speech. We had Greg Jackson and many other members of SOSCAN come along, and it was nice to see because John Taplin, just to explain to your listeners and viewers, had served on the USS Morning Light. He enlisted at the age of, well, he was just under 16, said he was 21 so he could get his grog ration. And he was born in Tottenham in about 1845. He served on the Morning Light. He was captured and spent just under 2 years of hell. at Camp Ford and Camp Gross down in Texas, and was eventually, after several unsuccessful attempts, was able to escape. After the Civil War, he served as a lieutenant in the National Guard, and he was also, unbeknown to him, there was another. John Taplin became a member of the London branch, as did a guy called James Henry Cleggett, and they became the subject of my second book, which is called Landsman and the Lieutenant, which is about James Cleggett as the landsman, John Taplin, who became the lieutenant. Um, John Taplin, as a British born, spent most of his life in America, and he came back, joined the London branch, and he died in May 1921 up at King's Cross. And as is the way, he never got a burial marker. And knowing his story, I felt it's got to be, it's unfinished business, really. So he got that. But yeah, I suppose what stands out as well for that day, that you've got Seth Herrick buried in the same cemetery. So we got a kind of a 2-for-1 deal that day, because we was
Yes.
able to put, and that is actually the first time ever that London branch banner in the UK has been placed above the grave of a former London branch veteran.
Yeah.
Um, so that was quite nice. There was a lot of firsts at that dedication. It was a first to see people, living historians, wear naval uniforms. A first was that we met Darrell R. Rivers,
Yeah.
or Lord Rivers, as he's known. And Darrell turned out to have become quite a great ally and supporter of our work, which we'll probably talk about later. And the other first was that after the meal, Greg Jackson, who's a SOSCAP member, said, "Look, why don't we have some kind of meal afterwards?" I don't know if you've incorporated a slide in that, Daz, but just to, the day was concluded almost like the banquet that the London branch members enjoyed at their meet and musters. And it almost felt as though we did the whole deal that day, that we honoured the fallen, honoured the veteran, and then we had a glass of friendship and a banquet, if you will, nearby. And the host of the pub there, I can't remember the name of it now, ashamedly, but
I can't remember myself either. Yeah, it was a great place. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
really good place.
yeah, it was an Irish themed
Irish
pub,
theme pub. Yeah.
yeah, in Hendon, not about a mile away. And I
I do
apologise
apologise. I
because
don't have a slide for that one.
no, but I think
Yeah.
obviously the day is more about the dedication, but it was
Yeah.
nice to get some closure.
And
So great day.
so also, Gina, in November, for Remembrance Weekend, we ended up in London, didn't we, with Darrell Rivers,
Yeah.
and that was a great day. So we laid a wreath at Abraham Lincoln's statue there in Parliament Square. So let's tell us about that, and then of course Darrell's given us some great ideas for 2024, hasn't he?
Yep. So you knew about Darrell. I didn't know about Darrell, but Darrell's a living historian. He's an advisor in terms of getting things historically correct. Had a fantastic and really in-depth knowledge of kind of English history and no doubt American history too. But he was, when we went up on that Remembrance weekend, so it was for the 11th, Remembrance Sunday, but we went up there, laid a wreath at Lincoln's statue to honour kind of, because a lot of the American Civil War veterans who were British born had been involved in places like the Crimea and stuff like that. So, to my mind, it's that act of remembrance. But anyhow, Darrell was able to, we went round to funny enough, the Crimea Monument, which is just round the corner near Westminster Abbey. That's where the London branch were. And one of the things is that when you and I were stood by the statue of Abraham Lincoln, you were wearing your Union forage cap, I do
Yes.
believe, and I had my jacket with monuments for UK veterans and American Civil War Association, and that initiated conversations, because there was still quite a few tourists in the area at the time, and a few people came up to us, and we got talking to some people from the United States who had no knowledge. So that raising monuments, raising awareness part of our mantra came into play again, because they had no knowledge of that, that British-born people had served in the American Civil War. And it's quite nice to have a really long and meaningful conversation. I will say that I'm also corresponding with those people now, and I've said to them if they come over again that with your knowledge and perhaps my local knowledge, obviously I used to work in the square mile, I'll be able to take into some places as well.
Oh,
So
awesome.
yeah, and I think the idea of, I think as you said to Daryl, is obviously I'm sitting there with my jaw dropping because he's talking to me about what he knows about London, and I
Yeah,
was obviously all I could bring to the table. Unfortunately, you and Daryl bring a lot of knowledge that I have no knowledge of. But I suppose I'm a bit boring in that effect. I know a lot about the London branch, so I could kind of go, oh, they were here, and then I think we also not only did we have that great conversation, and I think the idea of moving forward is we're going to do these things where we call it like lunch with Lincoln, and I think somehow as we go forward for 2024, we're going to try and see if there's a way we can go there just for the purpose of engaging people conversations, give them some flyers about the Monumental project and just raise awareness too, because it's really important to me that that's our mission brief. It isn't just about raising funds or raising the monuments from the funds, but it's also raising awareness too that that we can get other people to do the work that we're doing by sharing knowledge and stuff like that. So,
excellent.
so
That was
yeah.
another great experience. And of
Mhm.
course, loving all types of history. Having Daryl was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And he told me a few things and showed me a few things I didn't know about myself in London that day. So that was fantastic. But moving on, 2024. We're in 2024, obviously. So what's the goal for 2024 for us and moving?
Well,
You know,
yeah, I mean, you can see there two images. The image on the left is the cast of our centerpiece for the monument, designed by Stuart Stephanie, who's our committee member. Stuart's also a descendant of Union veterans. He lives in near Chicago. And Stuart, as we speak now, has submitted the cast. So what you see there is a facsimile copy, but he's now given the cast to the foundry because curiously, the only place that we could find that could do it at a fair price and utilising Stuart's knowledge because he's done this before. So the foundry is in Chicago. The next step, in terms of the monument, you will see the image on the right is kind of a proposed image of the monument, is to get the bit underneath, which is a comment from John A. Logan in his general order about how we will honour veterans. Just to reiterate, the monument will not have the names of veterans on it because we will never ever know the name. So to date, I think I've identified about 630 veterans of the American Civil War and perhaps Mexican War and other conflicts who died in the UK. But I just think it would be wrong to include their names on a monument because it will always exclude
yeah, cool.
others.
Yeah.
Um, so the monument itself, we've raised at the moment because we're always going to need funding, Baz, as
Of
you
course,
know.
yeah. So I was going to bring that up, really.
Yeah,
But I mean, we're a little way away yet from the monument itself, aren't we? We're probably
yeah,
looking at maybe 25, maybe
yeah,
2025,
yeah.
maybe even 2026. We don't know. But yeah, so what is the funding situation at the moment for us, Gina?
So we obviously had to pay Stuart for some of because he's doing it pro bono, but so we're looking at we're probably about 3,500 into the fundraising at the moment. Obviously, a big chunk of that's going to be taken out, so we pay for the metal casting. And I can't remember what Stuart said, but it's going to be, it wouldn't be far off half of that, which then leaves us the money to pay for the marker that goes underneath that plaque, and then for its general construction and labour cost, etc. Now, it's a bit like the chicken and egg scenario because at the moment, obviously, I'm putting out inquiries to potential sites where this monument can go. And it's a bit of a dilemma because where would you put it? Now, it seems to me that actually a cemetery is as good a place as any to put it. We had, for example, mentioned perhaps placement at a consulate or the embassy, but of course, things change and you don't know if the if the monument would always stay there. So yeah, I think realistically, if we're going to do this appropriately, that 2025 we can probably start going that direction. But as always does, as I mentioned before on other posts, nothing will happen with this monument unless people donate.
Hmm.
It does cry out for donations, but if you can't afford to donate, then obviously share our Just Giving page, or just share awareness of what we're doing and share that information. So if you can't afford it, which we know, I know we're in times of austerity, but if you can't afford it, then think about sharing the post because of that reach that other people might be interested. Case in point, recently when we were talking about other projects and concerning the London branch, somebody saw that we were doing it. It was published in some paperwork we give out in terms of London branch, and somebody donated $75 straight away. So it's these, it all matters whether it's £5, £50, £500. We got donated £500 from Suffolk Heritage Association in the last year. We've had great support from the Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War, great support from the Sons of Union Veterans Civil War, and we also got a donation from our comrades in the American Civil War Round Table UK. So it's a bit of a shout out to those benefactors. Not all of them organisations, some of them individuals too.
Yeah.
So yeah, agree with you. Realistically, it is that chicken and egg because we do
Yeah.
obviously there are regulations in place in terms of monuments and memorials at say cemeteries that we have to comply with. That is
Mhm.
not a world that I'm strong on at the moment, but I no
Yeah.
doubt as we go
Oh, I'm
forward,
sure you'll be. Yeah, you'll get there. That's because you're a determined person. Um, yeah, but so as far as dedications are concerned, what are we looking at for 2024?
Okay,
What have
on
we
the
got coming
radar.
up on the
Yeah,
radar?
so on the radar, 2024 dedication wise, no date to be confirmed because that's part of that will be determined by you because you're co-founder. But we've got John Heath, and John Heath lived out in Brighton. He had served in the US Navy, got wounded in action 13 times, was discharged, and goodness knows why, but decided to re-enlist in a fake name, did his service, returned to England after the American Civil War, lived out in Brighton, became a cop, and died around 1900. I've been in contact with his family, and I've had confirmation from Memorial Services, Department of Veteran Affairs, that his marker has been ordered. Now, funny enough, yesterday I emailed them to see if we can get an update on that. Other burial markers, and this one's going to be quite a special one, and again, date to be confirmed because we don't want to overlap with Southern Skirmish Association or the American Civil War Society, is a dedication in Derbyshire for Samuel Lander Howe, who was Company G, 2nd New Jersey Cavalry. Now, Samuel Lander Howe represents quite an important figure in the lost history of British veterans in the American Civil War. He potentially, because he's the only one that we found with verifiable service, is the last American Civil War veteran to die in the UK. He died 26th of December 1940. With his passing, that marked the end of the London branch of American Civil War veterans too, because he was the last veteran of that organisation. There are other people involved in the London branch who weren't veterans, who were like their presidents, etc. But so Samuel Lander Howe, his headstone's arrived in country. It's just a question of when we're going to do that dedication and really make it and give it that the kind of special element that it really deserves because of who he is. So that's sort of it's not up in the air, but it's about working out a good
Yeah.
date. So dedication wise, yeah, they're on the radar. I'm just in communication with a cemetery that's not too far from me, about 25 miles. And that is for Joseph Albert Nash, USS Gemma C, another London branch of American Civil War veteran member. Um, he died in 1928. Reputedly, had an American flag placed in his coffin, according to a family member. So I'm in the early stages of, I'm in the process of communicating with the cemetery on that. I think that's it. I mean, I think ultimately that we could do these dedications quite a lot, but there is a lot of work involved. And if people are listening in terms of hidden costs, there are hidden costs associated with the applications for these headstones. Sending letters, comes at a cost. It costs normally me about £10, £15 to post a letter with all the service history of these veterans. There are sometimes hidden costs associated with running dedications, signage, advertising, etc., getting orders of service. So if you are thinking about donating to the Monumental project, there is no end goal with this Monumental project. It won't just end with that monument that you see there. We will continue for as long as I'm physically able. I've given myself a timeline for this, Daz. John Davis started the London branch of American Civil War veterans when he was 71 years old.
Mm.
So I've got 11 years to get my act together and try and get what we're doing, to a point where we think, yeah, we're doing okay. So
Yeah,
there
and
you
then
go.
so I've got even longer till I'm 71, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm over.
But Daz, I'm going to fess up here.
Yeah,
When I go,
yeah,
this is on you,
yeah, I
and
know. That's what I'm
anybody
scared
else by your side.
about. I mean, I've seen, I mean, no word of a lie, ladies and gentlemen. You know, Leading up to a dedication, and even on the day of the dedication, on the morning of that dedication, Gina gets quite sort of, don't you? You get a bit anxious and a little bit,
Yeah,
like anyone would, because you've spent so long planning these things, and it's
yeah,
like, because obviously you're worried that everything's going to go right and this, that, and the other, and yeah.
mm,
So, there's a lot of emotion that goes into this as well, guys. So you know,
mm,
we appreciate everyone's support. But we're going to move on to the next topic now before we finish up here, and that
okay.
is in September of 2023. We formed the Descendants of the London branch of American Civil War veterans. And
Yeah,
this is a very special organisation. Not anybody can join this, or well, they can, but
mm.
so just tell us the rules on around, like if people would like to join this and what it's about, really.
Okay, so as you can see there, and I'll just talk people through it, is the emblem of Descendants of the London Branch of American Civil War Veterans. And you can see September the 20th, 2023. It was by design, not accident, that we founded the association on that day, because that's the day that London Branch was formed in 1910. Now, through the course of our work, Daz, as you know, I will obviously reach out to descendants of American Civil War veterans, many of whom don't know that our ancestors served in the American Civil War. And invariably, that process led me to other veterans of the London branch of American Civil War veterans. And again, it just seemed to me that in the same way that John Davis said, why not for what he got to the point when he met all these veterans in the workhouses who were impoverished, who in what they called straitened circumstances, they'd fallen on hard times. It just seemed to me, but why not join the dots? Why not reconnect all these descendants to see if we can utilize the hive mind and knowledge pool of all these descendants in a way that could really put the London branch back on the map? And as you say, it's we want to be inclusive because the London branch, many of their veterans hadn't served in the Civil War. For example, several of their presidents were uh, just people that worked in the community who were interested in supporting these old veterans, etc. So you had the Reverend William Paul, who was who was part of Westminster Church, where Lincoln Tower is in Westminster. He became president, for example. Walter Mangum, who was a London branch president, etc. So it seemed to me that when we were going to create this organisation for descendants, that we should make sure that we can invite to the party people who don't share that lineage, but can clearly share the passion to raise the profile of the London branch of American Civil War veterans. The reason why there's certain criteria is anybody who wants to join has to agree, and although under GDPR they have the right to be forgotten too, that they have to agree that their name, not their address, but just their name and location: Australia, America, Canada, Ireland, UK, Wales, is put on the roll. And it just links to who their ancestor is in the London branch and the ancestors service, etc. For that, it's completely free to join, but obviously people get a newsletter, and we've got a closed Facebook group, etc. And do you know what? Yeah, and that, as you can see there, so you've got our first meet and muster that we held back in October, I do believe, for our membership. So I think we had about 14 people there in the first meeting. You had people who were related to John Dow, you had people who were related to John Davis, etc., had myself, etc. Yeah, so it was, I felt Samuel Pruitt's relative as well there. When I say relative, you can be a relative, a descendant, whether you can be an honorary member, you can have an ancestor who served in the London branch, and or we're quite happy, obviously, if you've got an ancestor who served in the American Civil War too, but wasn't a London branch member. But a key business, if you like, is a little bit like London branch, but the Monumental project is to get headstones for these individual veterans. And we've got things like, if you haven't got an ancestor, but you might want to adopt a London branch member because a lot of them died without any heirs at all. So yeah, and you've got Daryl there pictured at the bottom. Daryl has become a committee member. You've got Barbara up there; she's become a committee member too, and Stuart as well, and Martin E. Cross in the middle, and yourself, because that's who are you in this role?
I am president. Yes, thank you.
There you go. And it said people, and whilst you may not have a London branch ancestors, it's because it kind of epitomised to me the type of
Yeah,
person London branch would have wanted, somebody who's
yeah, cool.
passionate and to raise the profile
So
of
you
the
don't have to have a descendant, but
no,
you have to
no,
go by certain criteria.
yeah.
And
So do you want me to talk you through the badge, Daz? The image, what it
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Okay, so you can see, for the people who aren't listening, but you can see that it's got the mantra of the London branch underneath, which says not for themselves, but the better country. So that's really important. We wanted that on there. You can see an old veteran, and the metaphor there is handing over a story of his life to a daughter or granddaughter who's holding a babe in arms that represents the next generations. And the idea being is that it's incumbent on those descendants to tell his story. Now, you can't see it on the image, but there's a headstone there. And it actually marks the date of the founding, the dates on the headstone of the dates of the existence of the London branch. So September the 20th, 1910. And there you go. And December 26, 1940. So we tried to do the artwork as well in a way that was sort of typical of the kind of artwork that John Davis included in his material. So that's our badge. And we've managed to try and get some merchandise out. So we've got stickers. People are interested and want to make a donation and get a return on their investment.
oh yeah,
We've got London branch stickers. We've got some merchandise for the Monumental project as well, pin badges that look like the ones the Grand Army of the Republic wore. So you can get a bit of bang for your buck, as it were. If you want to
yeah,
donate, you get something in return, because again it helps to raise awareness.
yeah,
So
of course.
Descendants, yeah, 2 newsletters have gone out. And fantastic. I think probably we'll just hold off on this, Daz, if I may, but some
Yeah,
fantastic new pieces of information that I wasn't aware of until we founded Descendants. Quite wonderful. But again, that's probably soon to be revealed at an appropriate time. So
yeah. So what I would say to people is follow so Monuments for UK Veterans of American Civil War and Descendants have a Facebook page.
yeah.
Go and find us, have a look, and keep up to date with what's going on. Like we've said, hashtag the Monumental Project. You put that into Google, you'll find everything to do with us, because we
Yeah.
put that hashtag on everything. So, but yeah, just quickly before we go, Gina, I know you are working on your third book, so just give
Yeah.
us an update on what the situation is there for that.
Yeah, 27,000 words. It's a bit of I was determined, and again, unfortunately, I've got this horrible COVID type cold that's been going around. But I'm very keen, and more so now, to write the story of the London branch of American Civil War veterans. I don't want it to die with me. As you know, there's other people. You've got Michael Hammerson, for example, great source of knowledge there in terms of the London branch. Yes, actually, he's probably one of the few other people that I know that I know of who know anything about the London branch. You've got a few articles online about them, of course, but for me, I want to join the dots. I want to talk about things that you've got like this. I don't know if you can see it there. No, probably not. Oh, there you go. So you got like the Women's Relief Corps annual encampment books. There's lots of information in there, their encampment booklets about the London branch. You got things like this, again, the souvenir, all these different booklets by the London branch. And I was quite blessed recently to get, I don't know if you can see there. Oh, let's have a look. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is loads of material that is from the Harvard University, sorry, Harvard Library, Houghton Library, and again, it contains some fantastic information about the London branch I've never seen before. So the plan is utilising Descendants to tell the story of their forebears as well in the London branch, utilising every available bit of information. As my tutor told me when I did my degree, I'm going to squeeze the data and hopefully get that book finished this year. So I'm about 5 chapters into it. We've just talked a little bit about the role of the Grand Army of the Republic. We've just talked a little bit about how they tried to create a post in Lancashire in August 1908. Unfortunately, it never got off the ground. But of course, a year later, as you know, the London branch started. So I'm trying to make it in a way that's readable, and it's kind of going to work on the premise of Campfire Tales. It's going to be the veterans telling their story with me kind of joining the dots and pulling it together. So hopefully it will materialize later this year. I'm kind of dipping in and out of it, but I'm really keen now to get that story done.
Awesome.
Apart from dedications, raising monuments, raising awareness, etc., etc.
So exciting year to come. And all that's left to say is thank you very much again, Gina, for giving up your time. And we'll see you all very soon. Cheers.
Thank you.